I'm a 38-year-old guy, married for 10 years, with 2 kids. On paper, life looked pretty normal: stable job, nice house, a social circle that liked us, and a marriage that most people would call solid. I always thought of us as that couple who somehow managed to make it through the mundane chaos of life without falling apart. My wife, Emma, was vibrant, funny, and, at least to me, loving. I never doubted her, or the life we built, until one day, everything cracked. I remember feeling lucky. We'd had our fights, sure, who doesn't, but I thought our disagreements were trivial compared to the bigger picture. We celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and even the small stuff like a good Sunday morning coffee ritual. Family events were usually a big deal to us. My sister's wedding was supposed to be one of those happy moments, a day full of love, laughter, and awkward dance moves that you'd later tease each other about. I was looking forward to it. I trusted Emma completely. I thought she felt the same about me. But somehow, looking back, I realize I probably ignored a lot of tiny things. Her disappearing for long phone calls, secretive texts that she'd quickly hide when I walked in. I always rationalized it: she's just chatting with friends, or work stuff. I thought the biggest risks in life were external: job stress, finances, raising kids. Never did it occur to me that the person I shared my bed with every night could be capable of something that would destroy me from the inside. Emma and I met in college, and for a long time, she was my whole world. I still remember the way she laughed at my dumb jokes and how I felt like the luckiest guy alive when she agreed to move in with me after graduation. We built our life deliberately: careful choices, shared dreams, compromises that felt worth it at the time. Over the years, though, little things started adding up. I noticed her texting more privately, sometimes disappearing for hours to run errands or meet friends, but whenever I asked, it was always fine. I should have pressed, but I didn't. There were moments I ignored because I didn't want to rock the boat. And honestly, I wanted to trust her. I loved her, maybe too blindly. Friends would sometimes joke that she was flirty, that she had attention from strangers, and I'd brush it off, proud of my confident, outgoing wife. I told myself jealousy was petty, that insecurity was my problem, not hers. And for a long time, it worked. Everything seemed normal. Then there was the wedding planning. My sister was marrying this guy she met only a year ago, and Emma suddenly got really into the fun details. She volunteered to handle the music with the DJ, even though I'd never cared about wedding logistics beyond showing up in a suit. I remember thinking it was sweet she wanted to help, though a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Why is she suddenly so invested in the DJ?" I ignored it. I kept telling myself I was overthinking things. Life was good. I was happy. Little did I know, I was watching a perfectly normal picture blur and distort in ways I couldn't yet see. The first hint something was off came a week before the wedding. I noticed Emma getting unusually quiet whenever I mentioned the DJ or the playlist. At first, it was subtle. She'd smile but then excuse herself, or say she had to double-check with him about a song. I thought, okay, maybe she just wants everything perfect for my sister. But there was this tension in her tone, like she was hiding something I wasn't supposed to see. Then came the night of the rehearsal dinner. Emma stayed behind with the DJ, supposedly finalizing the set list. I didn't think much of it, again, trust. But later that night, when we got home, I saw a notification flash on her phone, a story from the DJ. Normally, I wouldn't have cared, but for some reason, I tapped it open. It was nothing scandalous at first glance, just a boomerang of the DJ with a few people at rehearsal, but then I noticed her. Emma. Dancing really close, laughing in a way that wasn't normal for a group photo. And then, she leaned in. Too close. Her hand was on his shoulder, brushing up his chest, and the way he looked at her was... I don't even know how to describe it. My stomach dropped. I froze. My heart raced. Was I imagining it? I told myself it was innocent, a moment caught out of context. But the gut punch I felt didn't lie. Something in that little video whispered the truth my mind wasn't ready to admit. Emma wasn't just being friendly. And for the first time, the life I thought I knew felt fragile. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the video over and over in my mind, trying to rationalize it, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But deep down I knew. I had to see the truth. The next day, I confronted her. I tried to keep my voice calm, but it came out trembling. "Emma, what's going on with you and the DJ?" She froze. I'll never forget that pause, the way her eyes darted, the small tremble in her lip. And then she said something I still can't shake. I didn't, it's not what you think. I just asked him to play a song. That's it. Really." Her words were quick, rehearsed, too neat. But something in her expression cracked. She avoided my gaze, twisting her fingers nervously. I wanted to believe her. I really did. Then, hours later, I found the story on his account, the one she hadn't deleted yet. It was longer, and it wasn't innocent. Her head was tilted back against his shoulder, their faces close, his hand on her lower back. My hands shook, my stomach turned. My world tilted. I asked her again, this time with more force. She finally admitted it. Not fully, not in the way I wanted, but enough. They kissed. That night, at my sister's wedding. She said it was a moment of weakness, that she regretted it immediately. And just like that, the person I trusted most had broken my world. Every memory, every laugh, every promise, I didn't know what was real anymore. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, staring at her like I might see some sign that she'd been telling the truth in some twisted way. But my chest felt like it had been ripped out. Every heartbeat was a hammer. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to disappear. I felt dizzy, nauseous, like my body was rebelling against my mind. My stomach churned with a mix of betrayal, shame, and disbelief. How could she do this? Why my sister's wedding? Of all times, why that day? I remember muttering something that didn't even make sense. Why at her wedding? Why there? My voice cracked, high and trembling. She didn't answer. She just looked at me with that guilty, desperate expression, like she wanted to erase the moment but couldn't. I felt my face flush with anger, humiliation, and a weird shame, like somehow this made me less competent, less loved, less human. I wanted everyone to know, to scream it at the top of my lungs, my wife cheated. At my sister's wedding. With the DJ. And yet part of me still wanted to believe her excuses. I hated that I wanted to believe her. That conflict, love versus betrayal, was twisting me up inside. I couldn't think, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every memory of us together now carried a shadow I couldn't remove. Even now, weeks later, I can feel the physical weight of that moment, the dizziness, the nausea, the heartbreak. It's like a scar on my chest that pulses whenever I think about her, about that night, about us. The confrontation didn't come in one dramatic moment. It was hours of back and forth, yelling, crying, and silence. I kept pacing the living room, trying to process what she'd done, while she sat on the couch, head in her hands, murmuring half apologies that made me want to scream. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she finally said, her voice shaking. "It was one stupid moment, and I regretted it immediately." I laughed bitterly, though it didn't feel funny. "One moment? You kissed him. At my sister's wedding. In front of God knows how many people." My voice cracked, and I felt my chest tighten, like I was being squeezed from the inside. She started crying, and part of me felt a flicker of pity, but mostly it made me angrier. Look, I wasn't thinking, okay? I didn't think it would go anywhere. I swear I didn't. Didn't think it would go anywhere? I repeated, disbelief lacing every word. You cheated on me. That's not a slip-up. That's a choice. And you did it when we were supposed to be celebrating family. She tried to justify it, blaming the excitement, the moment, her stress. even hinting it was harmless flirtation. Every excuse felt like salt in a wound. I could barely recognize her voice. It was the same words I'd heard for 10 years, but now twisted into denial, half-truths, and gaslighting. By the end of the night, we hadn't solved anything. We were left exhausted, raw, and miles apart emotionally, even though we were sitting in the same room. It was the first time I realized that this wasn't just a mistake. It was a fracture I wasn't sure we could ever repair. In the days after the revelation, I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I kept replaying everything, our first date, our wedding, quiet nights at home, and wondering which moments had been real and which had been lies. My mind became a battleground, love and betrayal warring inside me, either side giving way. I hated myself for still caring about her, for still loving her even after what she'd done. I wanted to turn away, to block her from my thoughts completely, but every time I saw her, or even remembered her smile, I felt that same ache in my chest. It was exhausting, like my heart and mind were in a tug-of-war I could never win. I also felt shame. Shame that I hadn't seen the signs, shame that I had trusted her so completely, shame that our friends, our family, even my sister, would look at me differently if they knew. The humiliation burned deep. I was angry at her, yes, but I was angrier at myself for being so blind. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat normally, and couldn't focus at work. Every song, every laugh, every trivial interaction reminded me of her. I started imagining scenarios, how it could have been worse, what they'd said to each other, how long it had been going on. My thoughts became a spiral, a constant torment I couldn't escape. Even now, months later, that ache hasn't fully gone away. Part of me wants closure, part of me wants revenge, and part of me just wants to forget she ever existed. It's a confusing, painful mix, and I don't think anyone who hasn't been betrayed this deeply can truly understand it. The fallout hit harder than I expected. Emma and I didn't separate immediately, but the trust that had underpinned our marriage was gone. Everything became filtered through suspicion. Every text she got, every late night, every casual smile made me tense. I realized that trust isn't just broken in a moment, it lingers like a shadow, creeping into every corner of daily life. Our kids noticed, too. They're young, 8 and 5, but they could sense tension, the way our arguments ended abruptly, the cold silences at dinner. I hated that they were growing up in a house where laughter felt forced, where their mom and I were playing roles instead of being a real family. I felt guilty all the time, like somehow this was my failure, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Family gatherings became unbearable. My sister, unaware of the betrayal at her wedding, would joke about how perfect the DJ was, and I'd feel a surge of anger and humiliation I couldn't control. Friends were awkward. I wasn't ready to talk, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. Even at work, my concentration suffered. I'd drift off in meetings, replaying memories, imagining scenarios, feeling that mix of shame and rage. It was like the world had shifted under my feet, leaving me unsteady, raw, and constantly on edge. I also noticed changes in myself, irritability, bouts of sadness, sleepless nights. Every part of my life felt tainted. I wasn't just grieving the betrayal. I was grieving the life I thought I had, the person I thought Emma was, and the man I thought I had become in her eyes. After weeks of tension, we decided to try couples therapy. Part of me hoped that talking to someone neutral could patch the gaping hole in our marriage, that maybe somehow the Emma I knew could still exist. But therapy was brutal. Sitting across from a counselor, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. I wanted answers. I wanted her to fully admit what she'd done, to feel the weight of the betrayal the way I did. But every time she tried to explain, her words felt hollow. "It was a mistake," she'd say. "I didn't mean to hurt you." And I'd nod, smile faintly, but inside, something in me screamed. That wasn't enough. Not for the nights I cried myself to sleep, not for the trust that was gone forever. Therapy also forced me to confront my own feelings in a way I hadn't allowed myself. I realized how much I'd ignored little warning signs over the years, how much I'd prioritized stability over intuition, love over self-preservation. Part of me felt responsible for letting this happen, and that guilt cut deep. We tried to set rules: no private texts from the DJ, no late nights without explanations, honesty about feelings. But every small slip, every nervous glance, felt like another crack. And the more I tried to rebuild, the more I realized that some things can't just be fixed by talking. Even now, trying to move forward feels like walking on a tightrope over a canyon. One wrong step, and everything collapses. I want to forgive, I want to trust, but my heart keeps reminding me how fragile life can be when betrayal is involved. It didn't happen suddenly, but one evening, after another argument about boundaries, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I was exhausted, emotionally, mentally, physically. Every interaction with Emma felt like navigating a minefield. Every word, every touch, every look was heavy with suspicion and pain. We were sitting in the living room, the kids asleep, and I just couldn't hold it in. "I don't know if I can stay," I said, my voice barely a whisper, even though inside it felt like I was shouting. "I can't keep living like this. I can't stop thinking about that night, about him, about you. I love you, I really do, but I don't know if love is enough anymore." Emma started crying, pleading, apologizing in that way that makes you want to forgive, but part of me was gone already. I realized that forgiveness, if it came, wouldn't be enough to erase the memory, the hurt, or the betrayal. Some things leave scars that never fade. We didn't fight that night. There was no shouting, no blaming. Just a heavy silence filled with the kind of sadness that presses on your chest and makes it hard to breathe. I didn't feel relief, just a hollow sense of inevitability. The next morning, we agreed to separate for a while. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, practical, and painfully real. But as I packed my things, I realized life had changed in a way that couldn't be undone. The person I loved, the life I knew, and the sense of safety I took for granted, all of it was gone. The weeks after we separated were some of the hardest of my life. Every day felt like moving through fog. Simple routines, making breakfast, driving to work, even folding laundry, were colored by memories of her, by the knowledge of what had happened, and by the nagging question, how do I go on? I oscillated between anger and sadness. Some mornings I wanted to call her, scream, demand answers. Other mornings, I cried alone in the bathroom, wondering how someone I loved so deeply could betray me in such a raw, intimate way. The kids became my anchor, but also my source of guilt. I hated that they were growing up amidst tension, confusion, and heartbreak. Friends tried to help, but I often pushed them away. People said the usual things. "Time heals, she made a mistake, you'll get over it." None of that helped. I couldn't get over it. Not the betrayal, not the loss of trust, not the feeling of being invisible in my own marriage. Therapy helped a little, giving me tools to process the chaos in my mind. Journaling became a lifeline. I poured every raw thought and fear onto the page, trying to make sense of the impossible. Exercise helped too, though I often found myself running not for health, but to outrun memories. Even now, months later, there are moments when grief hits me unexpectedly. A song, a place, a smell, and I feel the weight of her betrayal all over again. Coping isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to carry the pain without letting it destroy you entirely. Even after months of separation, my mind refuses to settle. I still catch myself replaying that night, that moment in the DJ's video, and asking, was there more I didn't see? Were there other times I ignored the signs? Part of me wants certainty, a clear answer that this was a one-time thing. But another part knows that with betrayal, certainty rarely comes. I also struggle with trust, not just toward her, but toward myself. How could I have been so blind? How could I have ignored the little signs that now scream in hindsight? I feel like I was living in a fog, convinced my life was stable, while it was slowly unraveling right under my nose. That doubt seeps into other parts of my life too. Can I trust people? Can I trust my instincts? Can I ever fully let someone close again without wondering if they'll choose betrayal over honesty? Sometimes I catch myself imagining a conversation where everything went differently. What if I had noticed the signs earlier? What if I had spoken up? Could I have prevented it, or was it inevitable? These what ifs are exhausting because they have no answers, only grief and regret. And then there's her. I still care, in some way that confuses me. I hate myself for it. I hate the way a memory of her smile or a laugh can still make my chest tighten. Part of me longs for reconciliation, even though another, wiser part knows that some cracks are too deep to repair. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what love really means, and what betrayal really does to it. I used to believe that love was enough to carry a marriage through anything. Now I see that love alone isn't armor against choices, selfishness, or moments of weakness. Love makes the wound deeper when it's broken because the person who betrayed you had access to the most intimate parts of your heart. I also learned that trust is fragile. It isn't something you can demand back or rebuild overnight. Once it's shattered, it lingers as a shadow, coloring every conversation, every touch, every thought. I realize that forgiveness doesn't erase pain, it just gives you the ability to live with it without letting it consume you completely. And even then, forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. There's also a strange, painful clarity that comes with betrayal. It forces you to see people as they really are, not as you wish they were. Emma wasn't perfect, and neither was I. We both had flaws, but she made a choice that crossed a line I can't pretend didn't exist. I can empathize with her, understand her humanity, but I can't condone it. And yet, despite all the heartbreak, I still believe in love. I believe in its power, in its possibility. But now I know that love is not enough. You need trust, respect, and honesty. Without them, even the deepest love can become a cage of pain. Life after separation is quieter, but not peaceful. The chaos of betrayal has been replaced by a dull, constant ache, a kind of fatigue you can't sleep away. Mornings are the hardest, waking up alone, hearing only the quiet of the house instead of the familiar sounds of her presence, is a reminder that nothing is the same. The kids have adjusted in their own way. They see both of us regularly, and I do my best to make our time together normal, full of love and laughter. But I can't stop noticing how quickly their eyes flick to me when I raise my voice, how careful they are around emotional tension. I hate that they've had to witness this fracture in our family. I carry that guilt every day. I've started building routines that center on me: therapy, running, journaling, even reconnecting with old friends I neglected. It's not a replacement for what I lost, but it's a way to survive. I've also realized I need boundaries, keeping her at a distance, limiting conversations to practical matters, and protecting my emotional space. I still feel flashes of grief, longing, and anger. Sometimes I imagine what life would have been like if none of this happened, and then I remind myself that there is no undo button. All I can do is try to exist in the present, to find small moments of stability and happiness without pretending the past doesn't hurt. Life after betrayal is not easy. It's a series of compromises, lessons, and self-preservation. And some days, that's all you can ask for. Looking back, I realize that some pain doesn't ever fully go away. Betrayal leaves a mark, not just on your relationship, but on your sense of self, your ability to trust, and even the way you see the world. I've learned that love is fragile, that trust is earned and easily shattered, and that no amount of attachment or shared history can protect you from someone else's choices. I still think about Emma sometimes, though not in the way I used to. There's no longing for reconciliation anymore, just a recognition that part of my life, part of who I was with her, is gone. I mourn it quietly, privately, and then I carry on. I've also learned that forgiveness is for me, not for them. It's a tool to prevent bitterness from consuming me, not a permission slip to forget what happened. I've also learned to trust my instincts. That nagging feeling, that quiet unease, is worth listening to. Don't ignore the small things, they often point to bigger truths. Love can be beautiful, powerful, sustaining, but it can't shield you from betrayal or human weakness. Some days the grief still hits hard. Other days, I feel like I'm finally breathing again. Life isn't the same, and maybe it never will be, but I'm learning to live in a way that's honest with myself, careful with my heart, and aware of my own resilience. To anyone reading this, love deeply, but guard your heart. Trust, but don't be blind. And remember, some wounds don't heal in the way you hope, but you can survive them and still find a way forward.